Welcome, everyone. I'm so glad you're able to join us. A quick note, we will be recording this session, as you've just heard. If you don't want your video included in the recording, please turn off your video. We will have live automated captions. To view the captions, please click the live transcript button at the bottom of the Zoom window, and there you can select either a subtitle or you can open the captions in another window. So thank you all for joining us for a virtual informational session on Safe Stays by ReloShare. We're joined by Paige Allmendinger, who is the head of Safe Stays, a hotel booking platform designed for government and nonprofit victim service providers. Before working at ReloShare, Paige was the acting deputy chief at the San Francisco DA's office, where she piloted an emergency housing program in partnership with ReloShare. Paige has worked in the field of power-based violence for more than 10 years, having worked in shelter programs, 24/7 crisis response hotlines, and in program development and management. So we're really glad to have Paige here. If you have any questions for Paige, please feel free to add them into the chat. And, our staff will monitor the chat for questions and will interrupt Paige as needed. But for the most part, we'll save questions towards the end. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Paige.
Thanks, Chell, and thanks so much for organizing this meeting. I really appreciate it, and thank you to the New York State Coalition Against Sexual Assault. Like Chell said, my name is Paige Allmendinger, and I'm the head of a new hotel booking website that we call Safe Stays, that was designed really for survivor service agencies. So today's agenda, we're going to talk a little bit about the basics of Safe Stays, so what it is. We'll talk about why we developed Safe Stays as a hotel booking platform really designed for survivor service agencies. I'll talk more about some of the specifics of Safe Stays, so some of the details that I know many of you advocates are probably very interested in. We'll do a walkthrough of the site so you can get a sense for the feel of what it would be like to use the Safe Stays hotel booking website. I'll talk a bit about some of the ways that we're seeing our current clients apply Safe Stays and create interesting programs using the platform. And then at the very end, we will talk about how to sign up for Safe Stays if your agency is interested in creating an account. So I don't know if folks have used Mentimeter before. It's one of my favorite tools, especially for larger audiences where we don't really have the ability to have conversations. If you're on your computer, you can open a new tab and go to menti.com. Or if you're on your phone, if you want to be on your phone, you can open a browser and go to menti.com. There are going to be 2 questions that I'll be asking for some feedback on. And then when you go to menti.com, you'll put in the code 97159199. And so it'd be helpful for me to get a sense of the folks that are on the call. So if you could let me know, does your agency currently book hotel rooms for survivors? And the options that we have are, yes, we regularly book hotel rooms. Yes, we infrequently book hotel rooms for survivor stays. No, but we're looking into using hotels in the future. And no, we don't use hotels for survivors. And we'll give it maybe another 30 seconds and see who we have in the space. So it looks like we have a pretty even split of folks who either regularly use hotels or infrequently use them, and folks who don't currently use hotels. And so that's super great for us to know moving forward. And as we're moving forward, if you do use hotels, it'd be great to have those specific questions. And if you don't use hotels, seeing this as a resource for either your agency or for the agencies that you partner with. So what is Safe Stays by ReloShare? So Safe Stays is what we call a business to business or a B2B hotel booking website. So if you're familiar with other hotel booking websites like hotels.com or priceline.com, you know that you as an individual can sign up and you can create an account and you can book hotel rooms. Safe Stays, we only allow users that are, for our purposes, nonprofit, government, law enforcement, and hospital-based survivor service programs. So our clients are exclusively organizations. This isn't a website where individual people can sign up to book hotels with the features that we're going to talk about. So why did we create Safe Stays? I come from survivor service my entire career prior to joining ReloShare. Chell mentioned this, so I actually met ReloShare when I was at the San Francisco District Attorney's Office. And in the immediate months after COVID, we partnered with them to pilot a short-term emergency housing program for survivors in the Bay Area using corporate housing. But I've worked in so many different organizations and we've always had difficulty, no matter where it's been, finding and booking hotel rooms with the safety accommodations that survivors really need to make a hotel a safe space. And this isn't just true from my own experience. This is true from a number of folks that I've talked to across the country, that they've had a really difficult time booking hotels, finding hotels that would be willing to partner with them, finding hotels that would be willing to accommodate specific safety measures that agencies were looking for to make sure that stay could be safe. So when I came onto ReloShare in March, we really wanted to see if we could solve for this problem, because if this many agencies were experiencing difficulties finding and booking hotel rooms that were safe for the survivors they were working with, maybe we could find one solution that could meet the needs of lots of different agencies across the country. So this is an open-ended question. Again, this is Mentimeter. So for any folks, whether it's in your current role or in past roles, what are some of the challenges that you faced when you were trying to book hotel rooms or you did book hotel rooms for clients?
And just a reminder to folks that you can use the same code we just used to answer this question through Mentimeter.
Thanks, Chow. So financial barriers for both the clients and the agency, absolutely. Hotels not having vacancies due to other organizations using them for folks who were unhoused or homeless. Having the survivor show personal identifying information. Hotel was hesitant for a third-party payment. Can't ensure the safety, so not booking hotels. No openings or willing to respect confidentiality or alias program parts, and then issues with tax exemptions. Finding hotel partners that are willing to partner, and then funding to support payments towards rooms on the client behalf and client confidentiality. Checking in, asking for ID and credit card for incidentals, financial barriers, confidentiality, no opening, financial. So a lot of the same issues that we were talking to our community about. And so as you can see, even just from this very brief survey, a lot of the same things around confidentiality, financial barriers are true across all agencies when they're trying to book hotel rooms for survivors. So just some other context, the National Network to End Domestic Violence, if you ever read their annual domestic violence counts reports, they do a report where they ask agencies to report on certain metrics one day a year. And so in 2020, in just one day, there were almost 4,000 unmet needs for emergency domestic violence housing. And so if we assume that that metric holds true across the course of a year, that means 1.35 million requests for just domestic violence emergency housing are unmet each year. And that's one type of crime survivor that we're talking about. There often aren't shelter programs for other crime types specifically. So there are very few human trafficking related shelter programs, sexual assault related shelter programs, community violence related shelter programs. Often if DV agencies aren't able to support those different types of crime survivors, those survivors are having to access traditional housing and homelessness services, which don't always have the specialized needs or specialized understanding of what it means to be a crime survivor. There's also often wait lists for shelter programs, and then there are real limitations, especially for congregate shelter programs based on folks' gender, whether or not they have children, if they have pets. So congregate shelters play an amazing role for so many survivors across this country, but there are, a lack of available shelter spaces. And then some folks just often can't access current shelter programs as they exist today. And then these are some of the barriers that you all named in that question just a couple of minutes ago. So especially for crime survivors, there can be concerns around using the real name on a reservation. So if you book a hotel stay for a person using their real name, if someone is actively looking for them, all they really have to do is call the front desk of the hotel and ask if that person is staying there to be connected to their room. So having an alias is one way that we can ensure an additional safety measure is taken, because then that person's not calling with their name and able to confirm that person's location with the front desk of the hotel, who unknowingly may provide that, just thinking it's someone who may be a friendly person looking for their friend. Guests not having things for traditional check-ins like photo IDs and credit cards, whether they don't have them or whether, because they need to use an alias, it's unsafe for them to show their photo ID or put a charge on a credit card for a hotel, because maybe the person who's abusing them is monitoring their credit card usage, and so they can see where those charges are coming from. Another thing that comes up often is the deposit that's often required at check-in. So often they'll put $150 or $200 hold on a credit card for possible incidentals, which can be a huge barrier for folks who maybe don't have credit cards, who only have debit cards and only have so much money currently in their account. Some hotels don't even take debit cards as a form of an incidental holding. So lots of barriers around that. And then the last thing is, for a lot of agencies and in my own experience, if our guests didn't have credit card and ID, what would end up happening is that the staff would have to show up to the hotel front desk. They would have to scramble to find an agency credit card. Maybe their executive director has a credit card that happens to have some limit left on it. And so they have to find the credit card, get the credit card, drive to the hotel, and then present their photo ID and credit card at the front desk, hoping that hotel will still allow them to check in that guest under their staff person's credit card and ID, which is a great workaround for what it has to be, but it also wastes a ton of time, especially for those staff folks who could be doing things like safety planning or looking up additional resources for survivors. It can really eat away at the time that's spent doing those other things that advocates are much better suited to be doing with their time. So what we've done with Safe Stays, when we came up with the idea for developing what we thought would be a hotel booking platform for survivor serving agencies, we really wanted it to be consistent across all of the hotels that we would be partnering with, to make it one simple, straightforward hotel booking procedure. So what we ended up doing is reaching out to some brand level hotels, so at the corporate level of these hotel chains, to see if they would be willing to partner with us. And maybe it's because I come from survivor services, but to my surprise, many of them were actually really excited about partnering with us, because they knew that at an individual level, a lot of their hotels were doing this one-on-one. So a lot of individual hotel locations were partnering with a single nonprofit agency, but they had no idea, what that protocols and process were for. They had no idea how many of their hotels were actually participating in these kind of one-off agreements with nonprofit agencies. And they thought it would be a great way to, really have an understanding of how often hotels and their hotels are being used for survivor safety purposes. So all of our hotel partners have agreed to two core features for clients who book hotel rooms through our Safe Stays hotel booking website. The first is that reservations can be made using an alias. So when you're making a reservation in our system, which we'll do a little tour of later, the name that you're putting as the first name and the last name can be an alias. We at no point in the reservation process need the actual name of the survivor to make a hotel booking through our platform. In conjunction with that, there's no credit card or ID requirement at check-in for either the guest nor the agency. So all that guest needs to know is what the alias is on that reservation. They show up to the front desk of the hotel. As long as they have the correct alias, they're able to get access to that hotel room without having to present credit card and ID. And the agency doesn't have to send a staff person to check that guest in unless there's some other reason why it might be good for the hotel to send an advocate to accompany the survivor. But if it's just for check-in purposes, all the guest needs is that alias to get access to that hotel room that was reserved for them by your agency. The next feature that we built in, because we did all of this at the brand level, we're working with the corporate offices. We all know that that information doesn't always trickle down to the front desk staff. There's also a high turnover at hotels, especially right now, if you've been paying attention to the turnovers that are happening across lots of different types of industries. The hospitality industry is no different. So the average hotel staff person is there between 3 months to 6 months right now is the typical turnover. So even if we trained every single staff person today, 6 months from now, those folks may not be there. So what we've done is we actually contract with a third-party team that was already doing very similar work with insurance companies. So when folks were displaced from their homes because of floods or fires, they already had the infrastructure built in. So we're contracting with them so that every time a reservation comes through our system, they're being notified, and this is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And they're actually calling the front desk at that hotel to confirm with the person there that day, at that time, that they understand the program, that they know not to ask for credit card and ID, to confirm all of the billing processes, since there's not going to be a credit card presented at check-in, before the client is actually sent to the hotel. So practically what that looks like for our clients is they log into the site, they book the hotel room, they get that initial confirmation email with the details of the reservation, like the hotel location, the amount of money that the room stay was, and they'll get a second email very shortly thereafter from our 24-hour team. And that email will let them know, hey, I'm calling the hotel right now to confirm the reservation. Then about 10, 15 minutes later, depending on how quickly we can actually get in contact with the front desk, they'll send a second confirmation to say, hey, I spoke to Sarah at the front desk. Sarah is aware of the program, knows not to ask for credit card and ID, and the guests can go ahead and go to the hotel anytime now. And that's for a couple of different reasons. One, we want to call and make sure that this program is known about at that hotel level, because it really is counter to a lot of what traditional hotel training is. At hotels, it's very much, pushed into them, ask for credit card, ask for ID for reservations, and this really runs counter to that. So we want to make sure that we're just reminding them gently about the program. But two, when we send that second response, we're giving you a point of contact with the hotel who we have confirmed knows about the program. So you can let the guests know, hey, Sarah knows about the program. If you have any issues at the front desk, ask for Sarah and they'll be able to help you out.
Sorry, I couldn't quite hear you.
Sorry, my iPhone just went off. The third thing that we're able to do, because we're not collecting ID or credit card at check-in, and you're also not putting credit card in the reservation system. So when you're making a reservation, we don't ask for credit card. We're not processing them individually. This was, again, done purposefully because we know a lot of agencies, both governmental and nonprofit, really have limited access to credit cards. They may have a couple of credit cards with a certain amount of limit on it, but it may not cover the entirety of the need that they have for hotel booking. So what we end up doing is we put all of the reservations initially on a corporate account. That allows us to do monthly consolidated billing. So for all of our clients, all of the reservations that are made during the course of the month, the next month we send them one invoice for all of those reservations that they can pay via check, they can pay via ACH bank transfer, really trying to simplify the financial part of the process for them as well, and cutting back some of that administrative task of chasing down hotel folios. If you had multiple staff members making hotels, reminding them to send you those hotel invoices so you can consolidate them and pay them. So whoever your invoicing point of contact will get one monthly invoice from our team that can be paid. And then the last thing is it's a free to use service. There's no cost. We do have a basic application for all of the agencies that want to use the service, but there's no cost to using the service. There's no annual membership fee. There's no minimum booking requirement. So we have a number of agencies that have signed up but haven't used the service. They won't receive an invoice until they book a hotel, and then they're going to receive an invoice just for the cost of the hotel rooms that they booked. Some folks asked how we earn revenue as a company if this is a free service. Essentially, our agreements with our partner hotels is that we get a portion, essentially a small percentage of every reservation that's made through the system. And so then in aggregate, when you look at all of the buildings across the country, that's how we are able to earn revenue as a company. It's the same way a lot of the other hotel booking websites earn revenue, because you sign up for a hotels.com account, you're not paying anything up front. It's that same kind of thing, because you're pointing folks to booking at the hotels that are available in your system. So I'll pause there and see if folks have any questions before I keep going. Are there lists of hotels that participate in a given area? So we're working on creating a map that will be publicly available, but because this is still a growing program, we have new hotels that are onboarding all the time. If you want to know what specific hotels are available in your service area, you can send me an email, and I'll have my email address at the very end of the slideshow, and let me know what your service area is. And I can actually just send you a map pull out from the system that can show you which hotels are in your service area. I can't tell you the hotels that we are partnering with. I can share that information. So the first hotel partner that signed on was the Extended Stay America Hotel Company, which was really nice because they have kitchenettes available in all of their locations. So for some of our clients, they're using it as an alternative to traditional shelter programming. So for stays over a week, it's nice to have a kitchenette. We also have the Choice Hotel Company, which is hotels like the Comfort Inn and Suites, the Sleep Inn and Suites, the Roadway Hotels, the Cambria Hotels. We also are working right now, are currently what's called RFPing. So some hotel companies are owned by the corporate company. So Extended Stay America is an example of that, where Extended Stay Corporate owns all of the hotels that are Extended Stay America hotels. Companies like Choice, or two hotels that we're currently working with, the Wyndham Hotel Company and the Holiday Inn Express hotels, they're franchises, meaning that each individual hotel is owned by a different person. But with those hotel chains, we're what's called RFPing it out. So we've sent out an email to all of those locations to see which ones want to actively opt into the Safe Stays program. So we anticipate a large number of them will participate, and we're really excited to onboard those hotels as well. So we have Choice currently in the system and Extended Stay America, but we're bringing on some additional hotel partners. For agencies that have shelters, are there funding barriers to booking hotels? I think that's probably a question. So we work with a number of shelter programs that use Safe Stays as a supplement to their shelter program. So sometimes they'll put folks in a hotel room for a couple of nights until a space opens up in their actual shelter program, or the opposite. So maybe they have someone who's getting ready to move into permanent housing, but they need just a few extra days and they don't need the additional supportive services that are available at the shelter level. So they'll put folks in a hotel for a couple of days until they're able to move on to their next permanent housing location. So I think unless there's anything with your funders, I'm not aware of any funding barriers outside of that. Does the invoice provide detailed information as far as the alias and what states? Yes, so the invoices will line item by the alias name. And there's also a second category that we put, and I'll show you this in the booking system, that's called the client ID. So because we know that a lot of agencies are using aliases, we wanted to have another option for agencies to put in something like a case management system number or a police report number that could help them actually identify who is this actual client. So if you all as an agency decide you want to put the case management system number in that space, when you get the invoice, it will have the alias name and then a parenthesis with the whatever number you put in that client ID section to help you identify which that client that is. And it does have the dates for check-in and check-out and then the total for that stay. Yes. So the staff at hotels, are they held to confidentiality standards like the advocates? So they're not. So the way we have worked this program, and this is purposeful on our end. So the actual hotel staff don't know why the person is checking in under an alias program. They don't know if this is a survivor of domestic violence, of human trafficking, of community violence. They have no idea why the person is necessarily checking in under an alias. They just know that their hotel has agreed to this program. This person is checking in under this alias program. So they're not collecting ID and credit card. So there's no additional confidentiality standards. They're treated just like any other hotel guest would be treated, with the understanding that they shouldn't be asking for or collecting any identifying information from the guests. What do we do? Food costs, room service, mini bars. So we pre-assume you don't want incidentals like those charged to the account. So we, for all the reservations, have that turned off unless you all proactively tell us that you want your guests to be able to charge those kinds of things to the room. So for example, we have an agency that they give their guests, I think it's a $50 allowance essentially for room service at hotels that do have that availability. I'll show you in our booking system, there's an open-ended notes field in the reservation section that's any additional contextual information that you want us to relay to the hotel. And that would be a great example of something you could put in that notes section. So you could say, we want the guests to be able to charge up to $50 of room service, but we pre-assume you don't want those costs, because the vast majority of agencies that I know of can't pay for those types of costs. So I hope that answers the question. What would be passed through in terms of incidentals would be any damage charges. So if there are damage charges to the room, that would be passed through onto the invoice, but we assume you don't want other types of costs like room service and food charged to the accounts. All right, I'll keep going, but feel free to add additional questions into the chat if you have them as we're going through. Live demo, okay. So let's take a look at what our site actually looks like. So to get to our site, just so folks know, if you go to ReloShare.com and you go to login and you click on Safe Stays, that's a Safe Stays hotel booking website. And when you click on it, this is what's going to pop up. And so again, it's a password protected site because not everyone has access to our system. So if your agency chooses to create an account, we create one initial, what we call an administrative account. So we make one user account, but your agency can have as many agents or can have as many users as you need. So each agency can have tens or hundreds of people who your agency has given permission to book hotel rooms. Each of them can have their own individual user account. So we'll create one, initial account, and then I'll show you how that admin would create additional users for their agency. And then all of the reservations for all of those user accounts would all be consolidated in that one monthly invoice that we send each month. So when you log in, this is what the site looks like. It's a pretty straightforward hotel booking search and booking site. So there's the location, the check-in date, and the checkout date. For location, you can put anything from a city or a county. You can put a specific street address. The location is important because when the results come up, they're going to sort based on the distance to the location that you put in this section. So if you just put a city, it's going to plop a point right in the middle of the city and search around it. But if your guest needs to be close to your office or to a child's school, you can put a more specific street address in this section, and then the results will sort based on the distance to that location. So I'm just going to search a city. I'm going to do Salt Lake City, and I'm going to search for a length of stay and hit search. And then what you see are the hotels that are in our system. And then those are going to sort by distance down here. And so if you are a visual person like me, you can zoom in and see where the different hotel locations are. But if not, you can look down here. And you'll see these little green boxes around some of the hotels. So I mentioned that we did a lot of this with the corporate level of the hotels. And so what we're actively doing right now is we're RFPing to each individual location so that each hotel owner for those that are franchised can actively opt in. And we're right in the midst of it. So we just got our first small list, but in the next couple of weeks, we're going to have more hotels that we know have opted into the program. So these boxes will continue to grow. So there is an option to only show the alias approved hotels. So all of these are hotel locations that have actively opted into all of our safe stays guidelines. So the alias, the no credit card and ID, and then there won't be any billing at the time of the reservation. And you'll see that the nightly rates and what they start at. So if you click on view available rates, it's going to show you the types of rooms that are available. So if you're booking for a family or if you're booking for a single person, you may need 2 queen beds versus 1 king bed. So you can see what types of rooms and then some of the basic features of the room. So if it's a non-smoking room, if it comes with Wi-Fi, sometimes they have kitchen amenities, or if we know that it's pet friendly. This information is what's given to us from the hotel system. There may be additional amenities that aren't shown in these icons necessarily because they didn't put that in their descriptions, but this gives you a very basic overview of what's available with that hotel location. And then you can see the distance here. It shows you the mileage from that location point that you put into the search system.
Paige, we
Yes.
did get a question. Can you extend the stay day to day?
You can. So there are pros and cons to that depending on the hotel you book. So you absolutely can. I'll show you the extension button. Some hotels do offer length of stay discounts. So if you stay, if the person's going to end up being there for 2 weeks, you may be paying an aggregate, a higher amount because they're going to do a nightly rate for each of those nights that you book versus if you just booked a one-time 2-week stay. But if that's okay with your agency, you can absolutely do a night-to-night extension. So then if you find the room that you are ready to book, you're going to hit book now. And you'll notice this little countdown clock up here. So our system will automatically force a refresh every 10 minutes because our system is pulling the live availability from the hotel systems themselves. So we want to make sure that we're not displaying any rooms that are no longer available. So you'll see that countdown clock. And once it gets down to 0, it's going to automatically refresh your page. So then this is the reservation form. The stars here, this is not a user rating. These are stars that are given to hotels based on the types of amenities that they offer. So if you've ever heard of a 3-star hotel or a 4-star hotel, that means they have certain types of amenities. So that's what the star rating currently means, is that's the star in terms of the amenity types that they have. You'll see what room you're reserving for the length of time, and then the cancellation policy for the hotel. We have been very lucky that we have had flexible hotel partners where when we've had to cancel outside of cancellation policies, the vast majority of the time they haven't charged any cancellation fees, which has been really kind of them. But because hotels are owned individually, ultimately that is an individual hotel owner decision. But we've had a lot of great partnerships with our hotels. The first and last name here, again, this is whatever name the guest is going to use to check into the hotel. The one thing that I tell our clients is that I suggest using a different name for each reservation, especially if you're going to be booking at the same hotel, because if you have 3 Jane Does all showing up, they're not going to be able to differentiate because they're not collecting ID or things like that. They're not going to be able to differentiate those reservations, and it just becomes very confusing. So we have some agencies that use the same last name for every reservation and alternate the first name. You can be as creative with it as you want to. It just has to be names, not numbers. This is the customer ID section I was telling you about. So this could be a case management system number. This could be a police report number. This is really for your agency internal use only. We don't have anything to do with those. It's just we wanted to create a field to make it simpler for you on the back end when you receive the invoices. The agency contact person, because the agencies are our clients, that's who we are contacting. So if there's any question about the reservation or we need to follow up on something, who is the best point of contact for us and for the hotel to get in contact with around any questions for the reservation? Number of adults and children. So I mentioned earlier we have that 24-hour team that's calling to confirm the reservation. So one thing that they can also do is they can request early check-ins. So typical hotel check-in times are 3 or 4 in the afternoon, but as we all know, sometimes clients need somewhere to go earlier or want to see if it's available earlier. So you can actually request an early check-in. And then down here in the notes, you can put any contextual information. So would like to check in ASAP or would like to check in at 12 p.m. Any information that our team is then going to call the hotel and relay or ask. So say the guest wants to check in early, our team's going to call, ask if that's available. And then that confirmation email, when they say, hey, we've spoken to Sarah, everything's good to go. That's when they're going to let you know the status and availability for things like early check-in. This could also be a place you put, oh yeah.
I'm so sorry, but we
No,
got
no,
another
no,
question.
for
What
sure.
about tax exemption? Do we allow that?
So right now we're trying to figure out state tax exemption, honestly. So because we're a third party agency, we cannot get tax exemption directly ourselves. And because we are the booking agency technically for all of these reservations, we currently cannot offer tax exemption. We are trying to figure out how we can pass through our clients' tax exempt status to get access to that tax exemption. But as it stands today, we cannot offer it, but it is something that we're moving towards figuring out.
Thank you. And one other question, are we allowed to sort hotels to see if they are pet friendly? Is that possible?
So we are trying to figure that out. So we're adding new features. I didn't mention this. So we launched in June initially as a pilot, and then we did 2 months as a pilot program in just 2 cities in Seattle and Chicago. So we can't do that today, but it is a feature that we're building out. We have to, one of the interesting things about getting information from hotels is that they don't deliver it consistently. So while some of our hotels we know are pet friendly, they didn't send that through in the description of their hotels. And so we're working on getting more consistent descriptions from our hotel partners that would allow us to do those sorts. So right now we can't pull that information, but it is something we're looking at. And if they put that in their description, we can show that information. That's a great question. And then the last thing, so you mentioned pets. So a large number of our hotels are pet friendly. And if they are, it'll have this pet information. So it'll tell you what the fee is for pets, if it's nightly or a one-time fee, any of the maximums for pet allowances for that specific hotel. And then it will automatically add those to the charges below, just so you are aware. So this was a $20 nightly fee for the pets. So we'll show that total down here. And then this notes, again, can be any contextual information.
Sorry, Paige, that was an accident.
That's okay. I was like, I'm talking too long. So if your guest is a monolingual Spanish speaker or uses ASL, you can provide any of that contextual information so that when that guest shows up, the hotel, has some context. If they have someone who signs or if they have someone who speaks Spanish, they can make sure that person's available for that check-in. So then once you hit confirm, that's when you're going to get that automatic email to your inbox with the basic details of the reservation. And then very shortly thereafter, you would get that second email from our team letting you know that they're calling to confirm the details with the hotel itself. And the hope is really that, we can handle the administrative side of the hotel booking process while you all are dealing with, the crisis response with crisis intervention and emergency safety planning and things like that. So you're not splitting your time between trying to call hotels and then also working with someone who's actively in crisis. A couple other things. So someone asked about extensions. So on the left here, because it's a login site, we can keep a full tracking of the reservations that your agency has made during the time that they have been booking through our portfolio. So if you go to hotel reservations, you'll see all of the hotels that your agency has booked through our platform. And if it was an active reservation, so the status here confirmed means it's a reservation in the future. The person hasn't checked in yet, the reservation hasn't started yet. If it says complete, that's a reservation that has already finished, so the person has checked out of the hotel. And it would say active if the person is currently in the stay today, if they're still in the hotel. And if it says active, this cancel button will actually pop up and it will say extend, but I'm going to go in and show you in the system. So up here, you can cancel reservations and you can extend reservations. So if you needed to extend the stay, what you would do is hit extend. You would choose the new checkout date. Then the system's going to search to make sure that hotel still has availability. We don't want to try and extend if the hotel's sold out for the days that you're hoping to extend for. It'll then have you re-choose the room type and confirm. Then our team is going to call, again, they're going to get that notification. They're going to call the hotel to make sure that guests can stay in their same room, that there's no disruption to their stay, and let you know if there's any additional instructions. Like sometimes if you do an extension, the guest might have to go get a new room key card because the card that they have is set to expire when the initial reservation was set to expire. We're also working, and it should be deployed in just a couple of days, a shortened stay button. So we've had some folks where they book, a 2-week stay, but maybe the person they're going to permanent housing a few days earlier. So we're working on a button that will allow you to shorten the stay. Right now, you would just email our 24-hour team, and then they would be able to contact the hotel to help with those shortened stays. But we're actively working on making it simpler through the system.
Thanks, Paige. We have just a couple questions. One is, if there's a check-in with the hotel that doesn't happen, could you talk about the follow-up?
You mean like the guest doesn't show up? Is that kind of the context of the question?
Yes, that's what I'm assuming.
Okay, so what we do is we do that initial call to make sure everything's good to go. We do a second call at the date of checkout. So we don't necessarily get any notice if a person doesn't show up to the reservation. But when we do the day of checkout, we do call the hotel to make sure everything was, going smoothly and make sure the guest successfully checked out. Sometimes we have been notified at that point that the guest never arrived, and 99% of the time, the hotel ends up not charging for that stay at all, but we are not notified at the night of reservation necessarily.
Thank you. And the next question is this a 24-hour service?
It is. So if you've ever had to book hotels after midnight, you know that it becomes more complicated, which it is what it is. So what we do currently in the system, so I'll go back here. So let's pretend right now it is 1 a.m. on the 17th. When you go to look for a reservation, it's going to show the check-in day as the 17th. And what that traditionally means is that the person's going to check in at 3 or 4 in the afternoon. The guest needs to go now, right? It's the middle of the night. We want to see if that hotel has availability immediately. So what our current workaround is you go into the system, and when you're making the request, you do the early checkout, the request early check-in button. And then at the bottom in that note section, you put needs to check in ASAP. So then our team is still going to call the hotel and see, actually, the check-in is not for this afternoon, it's for tonight. Do you have space available tonight? And then what they're going to do is on the back end, they'll fix the invoicing to include that night of the stay in the invoice that you would receive the next month. In the next couple of weeks, we're working on a second process where you would actually be able to choose 3 hotel locations that you would like us to preemptively call to see if they have availability that night. We will then call those hotels and let you know which ones of them do have availability for immediate check-in. So it won't be you making a reservation and then us calling to find out if they have space. You'll choose 3 hotels or up to 3 hotels that we will proactively call to see if they have space. But in this note section, say it's 1 a.m. And so then again, that's how you would send it through our system. We're trying to figure out if it's possible to get live access to hotel availability, what's called a direct connect, which would mean that 24 hours a day, we could see directly into the availability of our hotel partners. That's not something that they currently do with anybody. So we're trying to figure out if that's even a possibility, which would open up the door for us to be able to know immediately if these hotels have space. So we're looking into that to see if that's a possibility, but that's a great question. So yes, the short answer is yes, it is 24 hours a day. On our website, if you go to the Safe Stays section, we have a user guide, and there's the contact information for our 24-hour team. So they monitor both this email address and this phone number 24 hours a day. If you have any questions about the reservation, they're available 24/7.
Thank you so much, Paige. We did have another question come through. Will some or all hotels accept guests who need to quarantine due to COVID exposure?
So we haven't had any explicit instruction that they will not accept guests who need to quarantine for COVID exposure. I think what we would probably want to do is think through and make sure that that guest is, masked going in so they don't spread COVID. But as far as I know, none of our hotels have required any proof of a negative COVID test in order to check into the hotel. And I think the past year has shown that hotels are the option really for a lot of folks to kind of quarantine, if they've been exposed or if they actively have COVID. So we have not been notified of any of that information or any limitations on folks accessing hotel rooms.
Thanks again. And are the hotels open to us calling and checking in on clients as a provider?
I think you could call, as long as you have the name on the reservation, they could transfer you to the room since you do know the actual name on the reservation. So we don't have any, there's no restriction from the hotel level that you couldn't call and check in on the client. We just don't proactively provide them with your agency's contact information. We try and provide, we're kind of the layer between so that they're not calling you to, directly. But there's no issue with you calling and checking on that guest.
And just to kind of confirm too, the advocate would be using the alias that they use to secure the reservation, not, yeah.
Exactly, yeah. So in theory,
Mhm.
right, if you're using the person's real name, there is the concern that it could be someone calling with malintent, but because you would have the actual name on the reservation, the understanding is that you know what that alias is, and so you can just be connected to their room. All right. So the last thing I'll show you is just for folks who would be what we call the administrator on the account. So like I said, for each agency, you can have as many user accounts. So anyone who has permissions agency-wide to book hotel rooms, you could make them an account. So all you would have to do is go to new, first name, last name, email, and phone number. And once you hit that create button, it will automatically send them an email so that they can sign in to their new account and start booking hotels as soon as they need to. And that's the site. Yeah.
Thanks, Paige. Have you had many issues with damage being done to the hotel rooms?
Knock on wood, we have not had that many issues, but it happens, right? It happens. I think we've had 3 total out of all the bookings that we've done. So we have booked over 1,500 nights of hotel rooms so far since we launched. And the highest cost has been $200, and that was for some pretty substantial damage and some active drug use that was happening around the hotel rooms. I think the only other charges we've had, one was a extra cleaning fee because there was food rubbed into the carpet and some things like that. And then one was a no smoking fee. So I think that was $100 as well. They smoked heavily in a non-smoking room. But luckily, again, knocking on all the wood, those are the only examples that we've had so far. And there's been some really interesting things that I've heard of from some of our clients. So some of our clients have things like they do basic kind of contracts with their clients around the, confirming that the person knows that they won't be causing any damage, even if there's no teeth to it. Sometimes having like a very basic agreement between the agency and the person that they're placing in the hotel, just reiterating the expectation is that they don't cause any damage. Some of them report that that helps mitigate some of the issues ahead of time.
Thank you. And related to the company agents, is it difficult to change administrators on the account?
Nope. So right now, all you have to do is email me, and you can have as many administrators as you need. So we can have, if you have 5 people who in your agency, you want to be able to have administrator accounts, we'll create the one initial one. Once you create their user accounts, if you just send me a quick email, it's very simple for me to go in and add those administrators. I'll keep going. Let's see if this will let me click. There we go. So I just think it's interesting. We right now have about 70 clients that are actively using the service. And there have been some really interesting ways that our clients are using it. So I just thought I'd share them with you as inspiration, or just, to think creatively as you all develop programs. I know that, it's something that I like to be inspired by other folks. So there is one state domestic violence coalition that's actually developed their own hotel program. So they receive some funds to help pay for hotel stays. And so what they actually have is they have an account for the coalition, and their member agencies are able to send in requests for hotel rooms from the coalition. So the coalition is the one that's actually booking the hotel rooms and managing all of the billing for all of the stays, which is, I think, a really unique way to help mitigate, the duplicative administrative processes that agencies have to go through. So not all of you have to deal with the, monthly invoicing and the payments and the financial pieces, that you can actually just do the core of what direct service agencies are skilled at doing, which is doing the direct services work. So I thought that was a really interesting application of the program. And then we also have what was a congregate shelter program that's actually switched. So they were relinquishing the lease agreements they had 2 townhomes that they were renting, and they relinquished the leases to those townhomes because they found that their clients, the social distancing requirements and just, the shared spaces weren't working for their program any longer. So they actually just moved to exclusively doing hotel stays through Safe Stays, which allows them to be scalable in terms of, they're not paying for rooms that are going unused, and they also don't have to turn away folks if they run out of spaces in their congregate shelter. And they can also, meet the needs of the client with different lengths of stay. So they can, rather than have kind of a cemented 30-day program, they can, book hotel rooms for guests for a week, a couple of nights, 30 days, whatever that individual person needs for their unique circumstances.
Thanks again, Paige. Another question. So far, do you have hotels in all 50 states?
We have 1 hotel in Hawaii, which is the only state that we have limited hotels, but we're actively trying to find additional hotel partners for Hawaii, but we have hotels in all other 49 states. And because we've chosen a variety of different hotel partners, so Extended Stay America has a lot of hotel stays in kind of like medium metropolitan areas and suburban areas. Choice Hotels really has a wide array of hotels in cities and suburban areas and in some rural areas. And we're really hoping with our new hotel partners that are currently RFPing. So Holiday Inn Express and the Wyndham Hotel Company, which has like the Days Inn Travel Lodge hotels, we're really hoping to have a really wide reach in terms of the hotels we're able to offer through our platform.
Awesome. Thank you, Paige. We know, so a lot of the folks who are here are from New York State. Would you be able to share or go back into the demo maybe and, show us, what we might see looking at a location in New York?
Sure. Let's try Syracuse.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say too, actually.
On the same wavelength. So here you see what we have in Syracuse. And so again, up here, you can zoom in, see the hotels. And then down here, if you want to just see the alias approved hotels, we have these 2 right now. New York was one of our newest ones that we were RFPing. So we're anticipating in the next week to have more locations. But currently today in Syracuse, these have guaranteed signed on to the RFP. We have booked at some of these other hotels in New York, and they passively have already approved the program. And so they're actively still taking these reservations with these alias components. But I would say within the next week, we'll have more of these highlighted in green once we get those RFP results back.
Yeah, one of the things that really surprised me when you did a demo with me was seeing just how many hotels are already participating in Albany, which is near where NYSCASA is housed.
Yeah, so it's been really surprisingly, like I said, great. I honestly think that this program couldn't have existed how it currently is really rolling out without COVID in a sense, because I think hotels both realized they were already being used for social services folks. And it was, a way that they could both feel good about the work that they were doing because they could use their hotels for social good purposes. And for a business line, it truly is a source of business for them. And so, you have to kind of speak the business language to business folks sometimes. And so they saw it as what they call a vertical. And so it is a way to, tailor their hotel training for their staff and things like that to really meet the needs of the agencies that we're working with.
Great. So we've got a few minutes left. Yeah. So the next question I was going to ask is, how do folks join in and how do folks get more information?
Absolutely. So there's 2 pretty straightforward steps, and you won't find it directly on the website. I don't know, Chell, if you have the email addresses of folks, I can send you the specifics of how to sign up. So right now we're still in our initial sign up process, which there's 2 components. One is an operational agreement. It's really straightforward. It's a 1-page agreement that essentially says this is a hotel booking website. We assume you don't want incidentals charged through to the room outside of damage charges. You can invoice once a month. You have 14 days to pay the invoice. Really straightforward. And then the second piece is an organizational application. So agency name, EIN, who would invoices go to, who would be that initial user account that we're creating, that admin account. And then what we do on the back end is I'm looking at things like 990s of agencies, doing a little bit of investigative background research just to make sure agencies, there's a bit of a vetting process. So once we have those two pieces, it doesn't take very long for us to review and approve. And typically it's a day or less to actually get your agency's account up and running. In the next day or so, we have a little bit more of a comprehensive application that asks some questions that just help us with the vetting process. So it asks about, the types of funding, if you receive VOCA funding or VAWA funding, if you're a member of your state coalition, things like that can really just help us. We want to make sure that no nefarious actors are accessing the site. And so we want to do a bit of vetting to make sure that we're being thoughtful about the agencies that are applying for and getting access to the Safe Stays booking portal. And then right now, we're currently only available in the US. We do anticipate expanding to Canada in the next 6 to 12 months, depending on kind of various factors. But right now it's just available in the US, but we're hoping, and we know that the need is out there for other folks as well.
Paige, we had perfect timing. We had 2 questions just to come in. One is, do you find that the rates are stable or vary day to day?
So they vary. I will say, so Extended Stay America specifically told us that they never exceed the GSA rate. So if your agency uses the GSA rate, they never go above that for their nightly fees. For all the hotels, it does vary. If there is a higher demand, it is market rate units. So the rooms that we present on our site are comparable to the same rate that you would pay if you paid directly to the hotel. Sometimes it's $1 or $2 less per night. So there is some variation, but our hope is that we're trying to get more hotels, not just so that you have more options, but also that you have more price point options as well. So when you're booking hotels.
Thank you. And just once again, could you remind us regarding the incidental charges and how they work, if they're allowed and how we can allow them?
Yep. So we assume no intentional incidentals. So we assume the initial reservations, there's no ability to charge food to the room, charge additional costs to the room. If your agency did want to allow those costs, in that notes section at the bottom, you would indicate what costs you're willing to have charged to the room. So say you wanted to allow them to charge food to the room or charge upgraded internet to the room, because sometimes hotels will have a baseline internet, but if you need like streaming, high-speed internet, there's an additional cost to it. We would need to get proactive authorization from you in that notes section or via email to allow those costs to go through.
Perfect, thank you. And currently, are there any agencies in New York that signed up with Safe Stays?
We have a couple of, so you can maybe see behind me my little map. We do have some agencies in New York, a couple in New York City and a couple on the outskirts of New York City that have signed up and have been using the site. I don't think we have any folks in Albany or Buffalo. I think they're all right now centric to the New York City metropolitan area.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Folks, if you continue to have questions, feel free to reach out to